Hey folks, Frank here. I'm 68, retired, and like a lot of you, I once sat in my living room, wondering what life could look like after the 9 to 5 was over. You know the question, what if I could live somewhere warmer, cheaper, maybe even a little more exciting? Well, a few years back, I packed up my life in California and moved halfway across the world to Thailand. At first, it felt like paradise, sunsets on the beach, $2 meals, freedom, like I'd never known. But as time went on, I discovered that life overseas isn't always the dream it looks like on YouTube or in glossy magazines. So today, I'm going to tell you my story, the good, the bad, and the lessons I learned the hard way, because if you're thinking about retiring abroad, I want you to hear the whole picture from someone who's actually lived it. Part 1. The Dream of a New Life in Thailand. Hey folks, Frank here. I'm 68 years old, retired. And these days, most of my hair has turned silver. I've been telling stories on YouTube for quite a while now. And today I want to share something a little different. Something that might make you think twice if you've ever dreamed about retiring overseas. Especially in Thailand. Let me roll it back a bit. For 40 years, I was a high school history teacher in Sacramento, California. I loved the kids. I loved the subject. But let's be honest, teaching doesn't exactly leave you with a fortune when you finally hang it up. Between my savings and my pension, I could get by in California, but getting by meant living small, cheap takeout. No travel, no new toys, no little luxuries. And after decades of hard work, I wanted more than just surviving. One afternoon, about 6 years ago, I was sitting in my living room scrolling through YouTube when I stumbled on a video titled Retire in Thailand on $1.200 a month. I clicked, and what I saw looked like paradise. White sandy beaches, turquoise water, steaming bowls of noodles for $2, Western retirees smiling with cold beers under palm trees. And I remember thinking to myself, Frank, maybe this is the answer. Maybe this is how you live out your golden years, with some real color, some real adventure. I started digging deeper. Rent in Chiang Mai was a fraction of what I was paying in California. Meals cost pennies compared to back home. The locals were said to be friendly, always smiling, and the weather warm all year round. I was hooked. By March of 2018, I sold my little house in Sacramento, squared away my debts, packed 4 suitcases and a backpack, and booked a one-way ticket to Bangkok. The moment I stepped out of Suvarnabhumi Airport, that heavy tropical air hit me like a wave. It was hot, humid, full of strange scents, and I grinned. This was it. This was the start of my new life. Those first weeks felt like magic. I rented a modest apartment with a balcony overlooking the Chao Phraya River. In the mornings, I'd wander down to a little cafe for a cappuccino that cost about $1.50. I learned a couple of Thai phrases, Sawadee Krub hello and Kop Kun Krub thank you. And every time I used them, people smiled right back. Evenings were my favorite. I'd stroll through glowing street markets, grab pad thai or green curry for dinner, maybe a mango sticky rice for dessert. I made friends with other expats, guys from England, Australia, a couple of Americans like me, and they all said the same thing, Frank. Once you're here, you'll never want to leave. And honestly, I believed it. I started filming little clips for YouTube, the floating markets, Songkran Water Festival, trips to Phuket. People back in the States loved it. And the extra ad money didn't hurt either. Life felt like a dream. But here's the thing about dreams. Sometimes they hide the shadows. And slowly, little by little, I began to notice that not everything in paradise was quite what it seemed. Part 2. The first cracks in the dream. So, life in Thailand started out like a fairy tale. beaches, cheap food, friendly faces. It was everything the YouTube videos promised. But if you've been around the block as long as I have, you know, life has a way of showing you the fine print sooner or later. The first crack appeared in something simple. The weather back in Sacramento. Summers were hot, sure, but at least we got breaks, cooler evenings. A breeze in Bangkok. It's heat and humidity all day, every day. I'd step outside at 9 a.m. and it already felt like a sauna. My shirt stuck to me, sweat rolling down my back. At first, I told myself, Frank, you'll get used to it. But after a few months, I realized my body didn't bounce back like it did when I was 40. The heat drained me. I'd get dizzy, lightheaded. Some days, just stayed inside with the air conditioning blasting and that electric bill. Not nearly as cheap as those videos made it sound. Then came the language barrier. Now, I've always been the kind of guy who enjoys learning a new phrase or two. I bought a little phrase book, even tried an app on my phone. But Thai is a tonal language. Say the wrong pitch. And instead of ordering rice, you might be asking for your neighbor's dog. Folks smiled at me. But when I needed something serious, like directions to the hospital or help with paperwork, it wasn't so cute anymore. I remember standing in a government office, sweating through my shirt, holding a stack of documents for my visa renewal. No one spoke English. And I didn't speak enough Thai. I felt helpless. For a grown man who'd spent a lifetime teaching kids, that was humbling and a little scary. Healthcare was another wake-up call. Don't get me wrong, Thailand has excellent private hospitals. The first time I went in for a checkup, I was impressed. Spotless floors, polite nurses, fast service. But the bill at the end, not as cheap as I had been led to believe. Insurance back home didn't cover me, so I had to buy international coverage. And let me tell you, at 68 years old, those premiums are no joke. A buddy of mine, another retiree, skipped the insurance and paid cash. Then he had a stroke, and his family, back in the States, had to raise money online to cover the hospital bill. That shook me. But the biggest crack in the dream, the sense of isolation. In the beginning, it was all excitement, new foods, new friends, new places to explore. But once the honeymoon phase wore off, I started noticing how far I really was from home. Back in California, if I got sick, my daughter would stop by. If I needed a ride, a neighbor could help. In Thailand, when I was down with a nasty flu, there was no family, no safety net. I sat in that little apartment alone, thinking, is this what the rest of my life is going to feel like? Alone in a foreign country. I don't want to sound ungrateful. Thailand gave me beauty, adventure, and memories I'll never forget. But those early cracks, heat, language, healthcare, loneliness, they were the whispers that told me, Frank, paradise always has a price tag. Part 3. When the cracks became warnings. By my second year in Thailand, those little cracks I mentioned earlier started turning into full-on warning signs. And if you're an American retiree thinking about moving out here, listen closely. Because these are the things those glossy travel videos and blogs usually skip over. Let's start with scams. Now, I'm not saying everyone is out to get you. Most Thai people are genuinely kind. But as a foreigner, you've got a target on your back, whether you realize it or not. One time, I grabbed a tuk-tuk from downtown Bangkok back to my apartment. The driver quoted me 100 baht. Halfway there, he stopped, smiled, and said the price was now 500 baht. When I argued, he shrugged and locked the door. I paid, because what else was I gonna do? I learned quick. Always agree on a price before you get in. And if it feels fishy, just walk away. Then there's the visa game. When I first arrived, it sounded simple: retirement visa. Renew once a year. But here's the catch: paperwork. Endless paperwork. Bank statements. Photos. Proof of address. Even a letter from your landlord. Every year, I sat in a hot, crowded immigration office for hours, praying I hadn't missed one form. And if you mess up, they can deny your renewal. I met a guy from Texas, about my age, who forgot one document and ended up overstaying his visa, cost him thousands in fines, and nearly got him banned from re-entering. Don't ever think the paperwork is just a formality. It's not. Now let's talk money traps. I came in thinking $100 to $500 a month was plenty. And sure, if you eat street food every day and live in a small apartment, it might be. But here's what creeps up on you: imported groceries, electricity for air conditioning, private health care, trips back home to see family. Before I knew it, I was burning closer to $200, $300 a month. And remember, Social Security doesn't stretch as far when you add flights and unexpected hospital bills. If you're planning to retire here, double whatever budget you think you'll need. But maybe the hardest truth: loneliness doesn't show up in brochures. I've met retirees who came here chasing sunshine and smiles, only to end up drinking alone at bars, spending their days scrolling Facebook, missing their grandkids' birthdays. Thailand can be paradise. Yes, but paradise gets quiet when you don't have your people around. So here's my warning to you, friend to friend. Don't believe the $1,000 a month dream. It's a marketing hook. Don't think the visa is just a stamp. It's a yearly stress test. Don't underestimate how much you'll miss home. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying go in with your eyes wide open. Thailand is beautiful, but it's not a magic escape button. Part 4. When reality hit hard. By my 3rd year in Thailand, the shine had worn off. Don't get me wrong. I still had good days, and I still enjoyed plenty about living there. But reality has a way of catching up. And when it did, I realized just how unprepared I really was. The first big reality check was healthcare. I ended up in the hospital with a chest infection. Nothing life-threatening, but I was coughing non-stop and couldn't breathe right. The private hospital was spotless. The doctor spoke English, and the service was top-notch. But the bill for 4 days in the hospital, over $300 to $500. My insurance covered some, but not all. And here's the kicker: at my age, every year my premiums went up. What was once $250 a month for coverage was creeping toward $500, then $600 on a fixed income that adds up fast. Next was visas. Every single year, the paperwork grew more stressful. One year, I had to show proof of 800 Zosen, bought about 25 Zosen in a Thai bank account to renew my retirement visa. That meant keeping a big chunk of money locked up, just sitting there. For a retired teacher like me, that wasn't easy. And the rules kept changing: different offices, different requirements. Some of my expat friends had to fly out of the country just to reset their visas. One guy missed a deadline and got fined heavily. The stress of it all was something I never planned for. Then there's safety and scams. Thailand is not as dangerous as some places, but don't fool yourself into thinking it's all smiles and coconuts. Petty theft is common. Tourists and retirees are easy targets. I had my wallet lifted in a night market once, and a friend of mine got overcharged for a tour package that never even happened. The thing is, when you're older, you don't move as fast, you don't think as sharp under pressure, you're easier to take advantage of. And scammers know it. But the hardest blow, being so far from home when life got serious, when my younger brother back in the States had a heart attack. I couldn't just hop in a car and be there. A last-minute ticket cost me nearly $2,000, and it took over 20 hours of travel. I arrived 2 days later, exhausted, guilty, and painfully aware of how far away I really was. That's when it hit me. Thailand wasn't just cheaper rent and pretty beaches, it was also distance, isolation, and the feeling that I was living on the edge of two worlds, never fully settled in either. So here's the plain truth, from one retiree to another. If you're thinking about retiring abroad, don't just look at the good days. Plan for the bad ones. Don't assume healthcare will stay cheap. It won't as you age. Don't underestimate the mental toll of being away from your family when crisis strikes. Thailand can give you joy, adventure, and freedom, but it can also drain you, test you, and leave you feeling alone when you need help the most. That's the real picture, not just the beaches and smiles. Part 5. The tug of war in my heart. By the time year 4 rolled around, I found myself caught in a tug of war I never expected. On one hand, Thailand had become my home. On the other, America. My real home was calling me back. And at 68, turning 69, those decisions weigh a little heavier than they used to. Let me tell you about a morning that sums it all up. I was sitting on my balcony in Chiang Mai, sipping a cup of coffee, while the sun came up over the mountains. Birds were chirping. Monks were chanting in the distance, and the whole world felt calm. I thought, Frank, how could you ever leave this? The cost of living was still far lower than California. I had friends here, a routine, a kind of freedom I never knew back in the States. No one cared about the rat race. No one judged me for taking life slow. But then the phone buzzed. It was a text from my daughter, Dad. Ethan's baseball game is tomorrow. Wish you could be here. Ethan's my grandson. He's 10 now, and the truth hit me like a punch in the gut. I'd missed almost every one of his games since moving here. Birthdays, too. Even Christmas. Technology is nice, but a video call isn't the same as being there. That's the push and pull I lived with every single day. The case for staying. Warm weather year-round. A rent I could actually afford. A slower pace of life that fit my age. The thrill of being somewhere different. Not just fading away in the same neighborhood I'd lived in for decades. The case for leaving. Healthcare costs climbing every year. The uncertainty of visas. The scam. The small frustrations. The loneliness. And most of all, missing out on family. Some nights, I'd sit alone at my kitchen table with a plate of pad thai and think, is this really worth it? Am I trading memories with my grandkids for cheap rent and good weather? Other nights, I'd walk through a lively night market, music playing, lanterns glowing, and think, how could I give this up and go back to paying $15 for a hamburger in Sacramento? It was a tug of war with no easy winner. My heart said, stay in Thailand. It's freedom. It's beauty. It's adventure. My head said, go back home. It's safer. It's family. It's peace of mind. And when you're nearly 70, you know deep down, you don't have forever to keep going back and forth. A decision has to be made. Part 6. The quiet decision. There wasn't a single dramatic moment. No big argument. No sudden disaster. No breaking news that made me pack my bags overnight. Instead, my decision to leave Thailand and to return home came slowly, like a tide rising inch by inch, until one morning I woke up and realized the water had reached my feet. It began with small things. I noticed myself walking slower through the markets, pausing to catch my breath after climbing the stairs to my apartment. I noticed the streets around me changing, new condos going up, prices creeping higher. My once cheap little neighborhood starting to feel less affordable than before. I noticed the faces of my expat friends growing fewer. Some had moved on, some had passed away, and some had simply vanished back to their own countries without a goodbye. And most of all, I noticed the silence when the phone calls ended, my daughter's voice on the other end of the line, telling me about Ethan's school play, my grandson's laughter in the background, and then the click, the empty apartment. And just me, alone again. I tried to shake it off. Frank, I told myself, this is the price of adventure. This is the cost of freedom. And for a while, I believed it. But as birthdays came and went, as Christmas after Christmas passed with me sitting alone under a small potted plant I called my tree, it became harder to convince myself. One night, I walked down to the river in Chiang Mai. The lanterns from Loy Krathong Festival floated gently on the water, each carrying a wish, a prayer, a memory. Families gathered, laughing, holding hands, releasing their lanterns together. And there I was, a retiree from California, holding a paper lantern by myself. I let it go, watched it drift away. For the first time in a long time, the beauty of Thailand didn't comfort me. It only reminded me of what I didn't have. That was when I realized I could keep chasing the dream of a perfect retirement overseas. But the real treasure I was missing wasn't here. It was back home, messy, expensive, imperfect America, with my family, my roots, my place in the world. Making the decision wasn't easy. I had built a life here. I had favorite restaurants, routines, even neighbors who nodded at me each morning. Leaving felt like pulling up a tree that had finally taken root in new soil. But I also knew that roots mean nothing if they don't grow where your heart belongs. So I started quietly preparing. I didn't announce it to anyone at first. I began selling off small things I had collected, donating books I knew I couldn't take, giving away kitchenware to the young Thai couple who lived down the hall. I told my landlord, with a heavy heart, that I'd be moving out. He gave me a smile and a bow and said softly, "Good luck, Uncle." On my last night, I sat again on that balcony. The mountains stood quiet in the distance. The city lights flickered, and I could hear the faint hum of scooters below. I thought of the years I'd spent here, the joy, the frustrations, the discoveries, the loneliness. Thailand had given me a second youth in many ways. It had taught me to live simply, to appreciate beauty, to laugh at myself. But it had also taught me that paradise isn't paradise when you can't share it with the people you love. And so, the next morning, I rolled my suitcase down those familiar steps, climbed into a taxi, and headed for the airport. No tears, no dramatic music, just a quiet resolve. I wasn't running away from Thailand. I was walking toward my family, toward the next chapter of my life. Now, sitting here back in Sacramento, watching my grandson run the bases at his baseball game, I sometimes close my eyes and remember the smell of Thai street food, the warmth of the tropical sun, the soft smile of the barista who made my morning coffee. I don't regret my years in Thailand, not one bit. But I also don't regret leaving, because retirement, I've learned, isn't about chasing the cheapest rent or the most exotic adventure. It's about choosing where your heart feels at peace. For me, that turned out not to be a faraway land, but right here, surrounded by the people who call me Dad, Grandpa, and friend. So, if you're listening to this and dreaming of retiring abroad, here's my quiet advice. Go, explore, live it fully, but know that someday you may wake up like I did, realizing that the greatest paradise isn't always the place with palm trees and beaches. Sometimes it's simply being close enough to hug your grandson after he hits his first home run. And that's the decision I made. Not in a rush, not in a storm, but in a quiet, thoughtful moment of truth. That's the end of my story. Friends, Thailand gave me adventure, but America gave me home. And in the end, that's what I chose. So that's my story. Friends, Thailand gave me adventure, laughter, and memories I'll treasure forever. But it also showed me the price of distance, the challenges of age, and the truth that paradise isn't always found on a map. If you're thinking about retiring abroad, my advice is simple. Explore, yes. Live boldly, yes, but never forget what and who you might be leaving behind. Sometimes the greatest paradise isn't a tropical beach, but sitting in the bleachers, watching your grandson hit his first home run. Thanks for spending this time with me. If my story gave you something to think about, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already, and share this with a friend who's been dreaming about life overseas. Take care. God bless, and I'll see you in the next story.